The video. This is going to be my impressions of Destiny 2, which I am currently playing in the background. I've made a few videos with Destiny 2. I do have a little recap from the last video. I did some research afterwards and found out what was really going on with the factions and all that. So yes, they did bring the factions back, but in a weird-ish way, I guess. Basically, the factions now are now like a part of competitions that you do to try and get better gear. Basically. And I haven't talked to him this week, so we'll talk to him, see what he has. What's that? The Risk Runner. It's a submachine gun. Oh, yeah, that gun. I don't care. Let's see. Increases sidearm ready and reload speed. Increases armor's mobility, allowing you to move faster. Doesn't really seem worth it. Although I don't think I've gotten this one before, so it'd just be nice to add to the collection, I guess. Titan Sunfire Furnace greatly improves the recharge rate of your solar abilities while Hammer of Soul is charged. Solar melee abilities recharge faster. Ooh, that actually seems kind of nice, considering thus far my favorite subclasses seem to be solar. And for the Warlock, we have transfers and step. While sprinting movement speed is increased in energy weapons. I already have that. Right. Let me take a look. Yeah, I already have these. I already have these in my vault, and I'm pretty sure they're of a higher level. Okay.
Is it your will to return?
Yes, it is my will to return. But basically the whole point why I'm making this video is because I've watched quite a few reviews of this game, and I think that out of all the reviews of this game, it can be safe to say that my views of the game
they're marching with purpose. They've engaged protocols for integration.
Won't be very different from the reviews that I've seen anyway. The main thing to take away from this is that this is just my views, and that personally I like to think that I think of things from a logical standpoint. So me personally, I think that most logically that what I think is correct, but I may be wrong in some aspects. Feel free to address what you believe I may be wrong on in the comments below. But without further delay, I'll just get into it. So personally, just from the initial trailers for this game when they were first advertising the game, I already saw it as a as basically just gonna turn out to be an overpriced DLC for the game. That's just kind of the vibe that I got off of it, off of what they were advertising. Because from the sounds of it, you were going to be able to play as the same Guardians you already had. And it was you were going to have some more story behind it. They were going to change up some subclasses. Well, they were initially saying that you were going to have all the same subclasses and then a new one for each. And then a new subclass for each class. But what am I doing? I need to find events. Of course. There are no events to be found anywhere. I guess I'll just go wander, I guess. I wasn't too impressed with what I was seeing off of the advertisements. And I did not decide to even get the game until after I had watched part of a live stream where some of my friends who had pre-ordered the game had been playing. So I decided, hey, why not? I will buy the game because it does look kind of fun. What's that? And so that's exactly what I did. I bought the game because it looked kind of fun. I doubted the fun that it could be at first. I will admit that it is a fun game to play. However, it does greatly feel like just a overpriced DLC, really. Because I am playing as the same exact warlock that I started on the original Destiny right now. This is the same warlock that I started on the original Destiny. My hunter's the same hunter that I started on the original Destiny. I had a third character on the original Destiny, but apparently you have to progress through so much of the story or get it to max level or something before they let you transfer it over. So I did wind up creating a new character, and the character creation is, as every other reviewer will state, is literally no different than the original Destiny. You got all the same exact options. Nothing new has been added. Literally the most that's been added to this game are the new weapons, armor, and these Legion dogs that you keep seeing attack us. I will admit that the story that the story does seem a little bit better than the original Destiny, and a lot of people would argue that the original Destiny didn't have a story, but that is just because that the story from the original Destiny was just hard to follow, especially if you were like me and you chose not to actually look up the the grimoire, or whatever they called the online catch of information that that stored all the lore behind everything you did. So it's not really that that there wasn't a story to the original Destiny. It's that the story was just kind of hard to follow. So there was definitely a story there, and people with a mind as open as mine was able to see and follow the story, and I do love that though. That is one thing that they added to the game that I do love. So you can now know when a public event is going on. You just have to go to the area where the public event is to start, and you just interact with the flag that's there, and when you do that, it instantly charges your ultimate, which I do like. So I don't know if that's supposed to be a feature, if that's like a bug that they have going on there. I hope it's a feature. But it is really nice. But I will say that the story is a little bit smoother on Destiny 2 than it was in the original Destiny. I will say that. But the story for each of the expansions for the original Destiny were also smoother than the original Destiny, because they actually had a direct purpose. You had a direct boss you were fighting, whereas in the original Destiny, the story was that you were literally learning about new threats, and the more new threats that you learned about, the more priority the new threats got based upon how dangerous they were. And you know, I don't mind that at all, actually. It wound up, in the end, the main priority of the original story to Destiny was to get rid of the Vex problem, which was fine, because you slowly progressed and slowly learned how big of a threat the Vex were to the Earth as a whole. I'm not going to exactly say humanity, because there's 3 different races in the game, as you would already know if you've already played the game or have knowledge of the game. And if not, the races are human, awoken, and exo. Human, obvious, it's just a regular human. Awoken are are kind of like humans. Oh wow. Could you stop damaging me, please? Awoken are kind of like humans, except they have suffered from a They have suffered from something. I have no clue what exactly. But they've suffered. And it's changed their biology, basically. So they're still technically human, but they've got like this neon look to them. And then exos are robots, basically. Robots with advanced AIs that give them emotions and basically make them human equals. God, I hate bosses so much for doing that. Can't you just like accept the punishment that I'm trying to give you and not knock me away? I walked into a blight. How unsettling. Ow. Can we just like kill this thing and complete the heroic event? Oh my god. Could you, like, just fucking accept your death? Got it. Oh, shoot. However, there are portions of the Destiny 2 story that I didn't like. Most specifically, and this is something that I would say that would make the story behind Destiny greater than Destiny 2, is the fact that your character has no personality. They have no voice lines, nothing. And from everything that I've watched on Destiny 2, they have literally no excuse for doing that. Absolutely none. There's zero excuse for it. I had a friend once say, oh, they did that on purpose for comedic relief. Every single video that I watch on it, not a single person mentions that that's why they did it. Not a single person. Not a single person that I've watched a review of the game on say that it was for comedic relief. Because in all honesty, after a certain point, it's not really comedic anymore, it's just annoying. And then I've had them say, oh, well, they just didn't want to, they just didn't want to have to spend the extra money on extra voice actors. Well, if you actually pay attention to the end credits, they have voice actors for every single race and gender. The Awoken Male has their own voice actor. The human female has her own voice actor. Male exo, female exo. Male human, female awoken. All of them each have their own voice actor. Every single one of them. So there is literally no excuse why my warlock can't have words of his own, and why my ghost should have to speak for my warlock. Any and every opportunity that your guardian is given to speak, they either don't, or they get spoken for by their guardian, or by their ghost. Yeah, by their guardian. Whereas in the original Destiny, you and your ghost have conversations, very comedic conversations, I might add, at points. Which gives your character a personality beyond just you, the player, playing them. Not only that, the traversing from quote-unquote planet to planet for the extensions of the missions seems to be a repeat of the original Destiny, with the only exception being that the Cabal aren't introduced on the third planet. The Cabal are introduced on the very first planet. However, once you get away from the Cabal and you're in the EDZ, primarily everyone
Let's capture this lander.
primarily everyone around that is an enemy winds up being fallen. Which, guess what? The Fallen are the first enemies that you come across in Old Russia. Or Old Earth in the first game. And then from there, you move on to the next planet, which is Titan. So you go from Earth, which is where you start in the first game, to Titan, which is a moon, which in the second game you travel to, guess what? Earth's moon. And guess what? It is infested with Hive in both games. And oh yeah, the Fallen also somehow found their way onto the moon. Okay, so that's the thing. Alright, so there's two similarities. Well then, next... Oh wait, no, I take that back. It wasn't until the fourth planet that the Cabal got introduced on the first game. But, then the next planet you go to, or quote-unquote planet you go to, is infested with the Vex, and the Vex have basically transformed the entire planet. Or quote-unquote planet. It's actually, It's actually not a planet, it's a planetoid thing called a centaur. Ow. But, in the original Destiny, you travel to Venus, and guess what? It's infested with the Vex, who have turned it into basically a machine. Turned the whole entire planet into a machine. It's a big surprise, right? Whole entire planet has been turned into a machine. Strange how this works out. And then the last planet that you wind up going to introduces the last race that has yet to be introduced, which this is where it differs a little bit. The planet that I'm currently on, Io, the Cabal are here, as you just saw from the event that I just did. So are the Vex, which is very reminiscent of Mars. However, it also introduces an enemy that wasn't introduced until the Taken King, which was the third expansion. Oh god, that almost landed on me. That could have been bad. And that is the Taken. So we get all the enemies from the original Destiny after all the expansions. By the time the game ends. Alright. Well, it's actually a lot of similarity between the original Destiny and Destiny 2. They literally rinsed and repeated Destiny. It's basically Destiny, which oddly enough is exactly what the last review that I watched said about the game. Last review I watched was by Angry Joe. He literally said that Destiny 2 was just a remake of the original Destiny. In the end, he wound up ranking his review of Destiny 2 as exactly the same as Destiny. So, in a way, it just kind of feels like it's a repeat of Destiny. But, to make things even worse, I got as far as the Taken King, all the Taken King DLC in the original Destiny, and I just decided I was done putting money into the game because I got the game primarily to play with friends, and none of my friends were playing, so I wasn't finding any enjoyment in the game whatsoever. So I ended with the Taken King, and I never managed to do any raids because we never had enough people to do raids, yada yada. But I find it funny how in the Taken King, in order to fight the final boss with excluding the raid, which is the official ending of the boss in basically every version of the original Destiny. The original base game, the raid is going out and wiping out the Vex very thoroughly.
The Taken disturbed my focus. Some transdimensional nonsense.
The Taken King going in and defeating Oryx in his own realm. Crota same thing as Oryx. But in the Taken King, in order to get to the point where you can fight him, you have to infiltrate a ship, get to him, and fight him on his ship. Well, in Destiny 2, and this is going to be a spoiler if you haven't finished the game, if you haven't guessed it already, in order to fight Gaul, you have to enter his ship and fight him on his ship. Wow. Literally rinsing and repeating all the way up through the Taken King DLC. It's astonishing, really. The only difference is that in the Taken King, the ship, the Dreadnought, that you have to fight Oryx on, winds up being a permanent place that you can go and explore, whereas in Destiny 2, the only time you get access to Gaul's ship is for the fight in which you battle him. Also, you have to take out his all-powerful weapon, which again you had to do in the Taken King. You had to get onto the Dreadnought and disable his weapon, just so that you could actually get in and so that you could actually get in and do like strikes and stuff there without setting off the super weapon that basically obliterated half of the Awoken's fleet. Yeah, it completely obliterated half their fleet. It's not something to take lightly. So, yeah, that was Oryx's powerful weapon. Created a big hole in Saturn's rings that are still there to this day. As you see at the very end of the at the very end of the game when you get the ending cinematics. But in this, in Destiny 2, their big, powerful ship weapon can destroy a sun. And it's pointed directly at our sun, which we need to disable the weapon before we can defeat Gaul. So strangely enough, they literally copy and pasted everything from Destiny's original release all the way up through the Taken King DLC, which wound up being for me about, I'd say probably like 17 hours worth of gameplay to get through that story alone. Maybe. That's if you take into consideration all the time I spent grinding out upgrades for all my gear and trying to get better gear and all that. And so basically they took all that and crunched it down into this one story that took me about maybe 6 hours to complete. Maybe. And that was on my first run through. That was me learning where to go and how to do everything on my first run through with the character that I'm currently playing as, my warlock. Took me maybe 6 hours to complete. So they took a 16-hour story and crunched it down into 6 hours worth of gameplay. Just to kind of put into perspective how much they actually rinsed and repeated on this story. Now, I'm not gonna lie, the story is fun and it is unique to the original Destiny, but the concepts of what needs to happen within the story are very, very much the same as the original game itself. And it just seemed like it ended all too soon. Not only that, they ended on a cliffhanger. I mean, we all knew that there was going to be at least a couple of DLCs that came out, because they basically flat out told us that they were going to be DLCs. And because they had a season pass, which, of course, me and my friends all bought the season pass. So as the DLCs come out, we're going to play them, or at least those that we've already gotten. And I hate it when people collect those things. So on to some other things that I've come to notice about this rendition of the game. I've noticed, and I'm sure anyone else who's played has noticed, that you don't seem to have as much stat customization on all your gear as there was in the original Destiny. And a lot of people may complain that there's too much having to grind in the game. But me and my friends all argue that that's part of what keeps our attention in the game, is the grind for gear. And just trying to level up all our gear all by itself so that we can get the stats that we want on the gear and not have a very minimal selection of stats. Like the game currently has. That's been kind of something that we've kind of felt was kind of lacking from the game. We don't feel as much personal satisfaction with acquiring our gear as we did from the original game. Not only that, we feel like there's not as much customization to the gear as well, which is kind of odd because most reviews say that they feel like they get more options for customization, but for us it's more than just the shaders that you can put on, and it's more than adding the mod that you want to the item. We prefer having multiple options that impact the exact stats of the weapon or armor itself. And missing all that, just kind of, it doesn't feel like we have as much
Asher, guess what we did? Caused pandemonium among the cabal.
it just doesn't feel like we have as much customization options as we did in the original Destiny.
From the unbearable racket. My head.
You can ask any of my friends that have this game that played with me on the original Destiny, and they'll agree that we had better customization options for our gear in the original Destiny than we do in this version. To be quite honest, that is actually quite true. Because there's literally nothing to work for when it comes to your weapons. Everything is literally just handed to you. And the most you get for customization is you get to choose what color it is, and one thing that it improves that probably has nothing to do with the armor or weapon in question. personally, I'd rather have the freedom of choosing the stats involved in my gear than than what they currently have. Personally, I like having options. I like being able to change how my weapons and armor work. I mean, they've got a little bit of that in the current game, which I can show you once this event is over, so I don't die. But another thing I could bring up is the changing of the subclasses. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do love the new subclasses that they've given for every character, specifically because those are the subclasses that you start off with from the start. From the very beginning of the game, besides the prologue. Would you look at this? Alright. We'll come over here. What's this? Okay. Well, that's as safe as I'm gonna get. So, when I'm talking about gear customization, as you can see, I can choose whether I want more recovery or mobility on this helmet, but that's the full extent of it. Whereas let's see, say this auto rifle, it has quite a few more options, and most aren't like this. So we get the high caliber rounds, shots from this weapon knock the target back farther and have it slightly increases the range of the weapon. We got the tactical mag, which looks like it's slightly this weapon has multiple tactical improvements, slightly increases stability, reload speed, magazine size. Might play with that sometime. And then different scopes that I can have on it, basically, that increase the range at the cost of the handling. Oh hey, which also does change the visual effect of it, as you can see. And then I have all these shaders, and then the mod. Normally, all you have to choose from are the shader and the mod, though, which doesn't feel very personal. This feels a little better. Let's see what else. Most of the armor, if it has, most armor will give you two different options for what you want to focus on. Oh boy, I have a lot of stuff to go through. Scout rifles just kind of seem like a bad idea in this game anymore. Let's see. Oh, would you look at that? Something that's actually better than what I currently have. But I like the look of what I currently have. So, and see, this sword is a good example. See, I don't get visual customization of swords. So you can't customize the color of your swords, but you can customize what kind of damage they do. And I believe that's it. It's all you can change is their damage, what kind of damage they do. And I actually think I want to apply that to my sword. But other than that, most swords have these options here. So there's the increased damage, increased ammo, and then greatly increased ammo at the cost of damage. I usually go with that one because I like having, because like it's not that big of a difference in the damage that it does, and it gives you a very high ammo capacity. Whereas swords and all that from the original Destiny had more of a more customizable options for their stats. Like here, this infinite guard and this whirlwind blade. This whirlwind blade would have actually been this right here, which is the adaptive frame. It would have been that ability there. Because this right here was always the trait that came with the weapon. And this adaptive frame, which allows you to use R2 to launch an uppercut attack, that would have been an option that you could have gotten in one of these trees over here. And you actually had to work to be able to use those, which actually felt good. You felt like you accomplished something when you unlocked these things. Let's not fall off the map. But this also ties into the subclasses, as I was about to talk about before the event ended. And why, you may ask? Well, for the as you can see, we still have 3 subclasses, 2 that are just slightly modified, extremely slightly modified. There's very slim differences. They also changed up the skill tree a little, so that it seems like an actual skill tree a little more, where each point that you put into it actually adds something quite effective, depending on your playstyle. But the second subclass that you got from the original Destiny, so the second subclass that you unlocked from the original Destiny is basically the one that you start off with. So, the second subclass that Warlocks got was their Solar class. Second subclass that the Hunters got was their Arc, and the second subclass that the Titans got was their Void. However, each one has been altered. The one that has been altered the most would be the Warlock's Solar. And basically it's mostly because of it's primarily because of the ultimate ability. The ultimate ability is Daybreak here, whereas in the original Destiny it was Resilience, I believe is what it was called. And the thing here is, in the original Destiny, the Warlocks ultimate Resilience basically increased their damage output, and every time they got a kill, it created an orb, which made them really good for like a horde clearing team ultimate filler. But now, and also if you leveled it up enough, you could cast it when you were dead and it would resurrect you. Now you no longer get to resurrect yourself, and instead when you cast your ultimate ability, you summon a fiery sword, and when you as you've seen me use it here, you can oh boy, that is a minefield. Ow. Oh wait, well, I got there. I've been revived. Alright. But as you've noticed me using this ultimate, I get a fiery sword, which if I'm already in the air when I cast it, it just holds me in the air for an extended period of time. So long as I'm pressing down the fire button, it'll keep me in the air. And every time I hit the fire button, I swing with my sword and I launch a little burst of flame basically at the enemies. Aw, I wasn't in that. There's one grenade that I actually enjoy being hit by in this game, and that is a grenade from a Scion. And it's all because it launches you in the air if it hits you. Oh, there we go. That person just launched their ultimate. Alright, I got launched in the air. My turn. But basically, I'm conflicted on this. I truly am. Because part of me really likes the change, and part of me also really doesn't like the change. Because I absolutely loved the I absolutely loved the previous the previous ultimate that they had in the original game for the Solar class. That ultimate was basically I mean, it was annoying in the Crucible, but I hardly ever played the Crucible. and I saw people using it primarily as a strike class and as a raid class, because if their warlock held out for the right moment, they could respawn and revive everybody. And if you got a few warlocks in there, you'd have a few, basically a few resets just hidden away. And it was just kind of like the ability that you used to ensure that you'd have the best possible chance at completing whatever it was you were using it to complete. For the hunter, the arc blade turn is basically the same, only instead of getting blades, I don't remember what it's called in this game. They did alter the names of each of the ultimates in this game, but it's basically exactly the same. The only difference is instead of getting blades, you get a staff, basically. And it basically does exactly the same thing as in the original Destiny. It's very devastating, very good for horde clearing. And it just feels exactly the same, basically. And then the Titan, I don't know what I hardly ever play Titan. I really do. So I honestly have no clue what the ultimate ability is called, or I guess the supercharge is called in either version of the game for the Void. I just know that it's their shield centered one, and in the first one it just produced a giant bubble shield. That's it. Just produced a giant bubble shield that your team could use, protected them, and then in this one, you legitly get a void shield that you can Captain America throw, or you can use for actual shielding, or you can just bash enemies with it and deal a lot of damage. It's just kind of fun. I don't really know what a practical use you could have for it. It's very devastating in the Crucible, that's for sure. But along with every single one of these subclasses that they've altered, you also have specific exotic pieces of armor meant specifically for each for the subclass.
They'd have this whole place looking like Nessus or Mercury.
And I don't know whether I like or dislike this, but this is the one for the Warlock, and basically when Dawnblade is equipped, which is the solar class, aiming weapons while in midair suspends you there for a short for a short time, and precision hits extend this effect's duration. Well, the reason why I don't know if I like or dislike this is because in the original Destiny, that was just an automatic upgrade for the solar class. It was just automatically, if you were using the solar class, you could, if you had it upgraded to the proper point, you could just hover in midair while aiming, and the more critical damage you did, the longer you could stay in the air. That is a key part to how I play as a warlock, so I'm glad that it was incorporated into the game. But I don't know exactly how I feel about it. And then I know that they did the same with the Titan and the Hunter, but I'm not exactly sure. Like I said, I primarily play Warlock in both versions of the game.
I trust you remember what to do.
So I honestly couldn't tell you what it was that they took from. Oh yeah, it went. I know what the Hunters to depending on which game it is you're talking about, Destiny or Destiny 2. I now know what the names of the ultimates are. So there's the Arc Blade from the original Destiny, and in this game they call it the Arc Strider. So I don't know what it was that they took from the Arc Blade subclass and gave it to the gear specific to the Arc Strider. The exotic gear specific to the Arc Strider. I can't tell you that off the top of my head, but I do know that they took a portion of the they took a portion of the subclass itself, of the original subclass itself, and put it into exotic gear specific to the new rendition of the subclass. I mean, I'm glad I can glide and then hover while aiming with this subclass, but I just don't think that I should have to. Oops. I just don't think that I should have to be wearing a specific piece of armor in order to be able to do it. And of course, I haven't been able to complete any raids, so I can't really put an opinion on the raids. I've been able to mess around a little bit on the raid for this game, and I will say that if you're all by yourself, just the beginning portion of the raid is like good for like it's probably the best way to farm for bright Ingrams, basically. Yeah, I'd probably say it's the best way to farm for bright Ingrams. Because it's just basically endless hordes of enemies. So I mean, there's a bonus for that, but I just feel like they don't give you enough enough reason to have to grind for things. Because the bright Ingrams are literally just for cosmetic items. And unless you're trying to get a completely matching set of gear that would otherwise not match, you really have no reason to just spam bright Ingrams. Which is another thing that I guess differs with me and my friends compared to most other people who give their review of the game. Me and my friends personally think that there should be more grinding to be done. There should be more grinding to the game. You should actually have to grind more to get better gear. Because what I'm doing right now is is literally the easiest way to get better gear, and it's very repetitive, and it just doesn't really feel like you're doing anything. Like, part of the grind to get better gear was more than just doing this to acquire the better gear. It was actually getting the better gear, then leveling up the better gear to its best quality. In the original game.
What a nice lander sitting all alone out here. Let's take it. As long as you can take it far, far away from me.
And this lack of this lack of grinding just kind of makes the game feel too easy.
They won't see again.
Sorry, it's hard to talk and play at the same time for me. I'm trying to focus so I can complete this.
what we did. Caused pandemonium
And I suppose, really, the only thing I have left to talk about, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments section below, would be the Crucible at this point. Me personally, I've never actually been a fan of the Crucible. Oh, this seems like a pretty safe spot. I'm just not a fan of the PvP portion for the same reason that some of my friends can't get into other games, and that's because it reminds me too much of Call of Duty, where as much as they try to deny it, it's not really skill oriented. It's not really skill oriented until you get to a point where there's no possible way that anyone until there's no possible way that everyone that you're playing with has any better gear than you, basically. It's all about the quality of your gear, basically. If you have this, you're gonna beat this person because they don't have it. It's basically how the Crucible works. And albeit that it's not as bad now as it was originally in the original Crucible and the original Destiny. I feel like I've been saying original Destiny a lot, but I will say, for as much as I dislike the Crucible is actually not that bad in this game. I still prefer not playing it. And the only time I really actually do play it is when I'm trying to complete challenges. Stuff like that, but I will say that they did improve upon the Crucible from the original game. It does feel like having 4 people on a team, which winds up making the matches a 4v4 with only 8 people instead of a 5v5 with 10 people. It does seem like the matches last a little bit longer and aren't always as one-sided. The matches seem a little more well-balanced. And I can actually do stuff in the Crucible now. That wasn't always the case in the original Destiny. I was lucky to get a kill 1 out of every 10 matches, let alone get multiple. Ow. And now, so long as I'm playing by myself, I can actually get quite a few. Have actually got a pretty decent kill death ratio in the Crucible. Overall, would I say that that this game is better than Destiny? No, I wouldn't. Would I say it's worse? Again, no. I wouldn't say it's either better or worse. There are so many things that Destiny 2 did better. The story, besides having no personality in the playable characters, was by far better. The Crucible was improved. I do wish that they would have been a little more I can't even think of what I'm trying to say here. I wish they would have been a little more creative in the plot line of the story. Instead of just rinse repeating everything from the original Destiny all the way up through the Taken King. It's a little odd that I find it a little odd that they just basically take and remake the original game altogether. Would I say that Destiny 2 is justified to have been released at the price of a brand new game? Honestly, I would not. However, I will say that I have gotten my money's worth of fun out of the game. Either way, but it still is not capable of being called a full game, because it completely feels like just another DLC, really. It just feels like another DLC is all. I feel like they could have given this a completely different name.
I'm ready.
And sold it as another DLC for Destiny and gotten the exact same reaction.
Their simulations are potentially limitless.
This doesn't feel like a brand new game. it feels like
I have
they
considered
literally remade
none of my
the original
research indicates a
Destiny,
way to extricate
and
this technology from its shell.
just kind of changed the story, but kept the same basic, same basic plot line for how you're introduced to enemies. It really doesn't feel like it deserves to be called a brand new game. Is it better than Destiny? No. Is Destiny better than it? Again, no. However, I feel like it's hard to explain this, but it doesn't feel like a brand new game, and it doesn't feel like it's better or worse than the original. It feels about how a DLC should feel, really. It's not better than the original game, it's not worse than the original game, it just kind of adds content to the original game. And something about that it just doesn't feel right, knowing that it's supposed to be a new game. It's supposed to be different from Destiny, and it just doesn't feel different from Destiny. So like I told my friends when I first saw the ad for Destiny 2, it seems like it's just another DLC that they're pricing at a full game cost, is what it seems like. Just my honest personal opinion. And just from the fact that I was able to transfer my character over from the original Destiny, continue the story that I started. Not only was I able to continue the story, it told me every single one of my accomplishments before I even got to play any of the game. When I started my first character, it went through every single accomplishment, and it had anybody and everybody that helped me complete that. I found out that most of the accomplishments I wound up completing myself. And then the only thing that I didn't do from the first game was the Iron Banner DLC. Because by that point, I was just tired of putting money into the game. Now, this game is nothing more than an overpriced DLC. Neither better than the original game, or worse. It's got its ups, it's got its downs. In the end, I find myself a little disappointed in how this turned out. But yet again, I expected it from the beginning, so I'm not entirely disappointed. I wish Bungie could have stepped up their game a little bit on the production of this game, but you can't force them to produce something that they're probably not ready to produce. I mean, if they were, they'd have given it to us on the first game. And that's my opinion on it. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. leave a like if you like the video, subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you in the next video or broadcast. Thanks for watching, guys.